The immigration debate is officially underway here on Capitol Hill, and there is a lot to negotiate. The big question, is there a path to a solution or any kind of solution at all?
They really do have their work cut out for them, especially given these two GOP senators. Both of them have said that they do not believe that this trial is even constitutional. They're very happy also with what they're seeing in Georgia, and they knew that this was going to be a very important state.
This situation has escalated very, very quickly. There are people that have breached the inside of the U.S. Capitol. Protesters somehow were able to get through the front door.
Usually what we see when it's a big inauguration, we see literally crowds all the way down the National Mall.
I can ask a follow-up to one of the doctors. If you allow children back in the schools, wouldn't that pose a threat to spreading the virus even further to some of those vulnerable?
Well, I think the answer is obvious.
Republicans in the House and the Senate have different ideas when it comes to policy and when it comes to strategy. And Democrats in the Senate don't even really want to participate at this point.
As you mentioned with the law clerks, when we saw them standing on the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court, part of what they were doing there really resembles Jewish tradition. This is an example of the cabin that the crew would reside in at night. And as you can see here, this mattress is no larger than a twin. Democrats are going to have a very robust outreach effort to compete with this one here. All three of these Republicans really have been wavering in the aftermath of these allegations. We don't expect these to be available to kids until the end of 2021 or even into 2022. More money, more problems. That's the reality several borrowers are facing after they applied for the small business loan program through multiple banks and ended up with twice the amount they expected.
Nobody expected this to happen, and it did happen. I don't know how they got through, but duplicate applications got through, and somebody needs to answer for that.
Rita Zapko, a business and tax consultant, discovered the error with several of her small business clients.
We saw the wires pending, and we were thinking, oh, this is going to get halted at some point, and then the wires settled. Surprise, a few hours later, there's the money.
This exact scenario played out with other applicants. They showed us documentation that the loans had been approved and deposited right into their bank accounts by different lenders, almost simultaneously. What at least 5 of these applicants had in common, they applied through Chase or PayPal, and they received their funding late Friday evening.
There's nothing wrong with applying to multiple lenders. And obviously, hopefully, if you get one loan, you get one loan, and then the others are turned down.
But that's not what happened. Those who were funded twice say they submitted multiple applications with the same employer identification number. This should have been flagged by the Small Business Administration before it ever entered the agency's loan portal. Making this even more complicated for Chase and PayPal borrowers, they were forced to accept the money up front or lose the loan. This made it impossible to reject the funds before it hit their accounts.
Should there have been a spot to say, yes, I approve or decline before the funds came? Possibly.
Chase Bank acknowledges they're aware of the double funding issues, telling us a handful of customers have reported that they were also funded by another institution as well. The SBA will respond to each customer directly and determine the next steps. The SBA has not responded to our request for comment. Senator Marco Rubio, the architect of the loan program, says those who receive duplicate payments will not be penalized if they're upfront about the error.
I would certainly document it, put it in writing, send the SBA a letter so you have it in writing. Contact your lender in writing as well. Tell them you want to send the money back because you've gotten 2 loans. What they can't do is obviously spend it.
This latest snag means this program could be even more susceptible to fraud.
I think most people are going to return them very quickly because they're afraid that they accidentally just committed a crime, but you're going to have a percentage of people that aren't going to give the money back.
In Washington, Samantha-Jo Roth, Spectrum, Bay News 9.
There isn't a whole lot of coral left in the Southeast Florida region.
3 miles off the Florida Keys, 4 scientists in a small boat are racing to stop a mysterious killer.
I think people would be very shocked to know that within 2 weeks, a small colony can be dead.
Karen Neely, a coral ecologist at Nova Southeastern University, is leading this group, attempting to slow the infection and fight to preserve what remains.
Scientists and marine biologists spend a lot of time documenting particularly declines of ecosystems, and we're actually one of the few that are lucky enough to be able to get out here and try to do something about it.
A different kind of way to start your morning.
We joined the team on one of their medical missions to treat the coral.
Researcher Kevin McCauley and the group mix up antibiotics into paste, filling dozens of syringes with the concoction.
The amoxicillin, though, is obviously the really important part. That's what's doing the hard work actually stopping this disease.
Up in this area might be a good area for you to head to first.
And then it's go time.
Thank you.
This is a hands-on kind of job. Scientists apply the formula directly onto the tissue of the sick coral. Then the paste slowly releases the drug.
Just like that, right onto the face of the coral, right onto that disease margin. It's a pretty obvious disease margin. There's a big white line right up against healthy tissue on the coral, so it's an obvious one to see.
I think most of us don't have fingerprints at this point because we're applying it to the corals, but whatever it takes.
The researchers document their findings, marking when they provide treatment with nails and large yellow tags.
We go back to the coral, we look around, look where the nails are and see if there's any active disease to see if that treatment was effective or ineffective.
This is one of the most coral-dense areas these researchers treat. They've tagged up to 800 corals here, and without their intervention, they aren't sure if there would be any left.
We were out here a couple weeks ago looking for some other corals for another type of project. And as we looked around, we realized that everything here was either dead or had been treated by us.
Neely's group has been implementing this method for a little over a year, and they've seen an 85% success rate. In a disease outbreak that typically kills 66 to 100% of the corals infected, the team has lost less than 1% of the corals they've treated. But it's challenging and labor-intensive to keep going underwater for a cure.
It is exhausting. It's hard on the body. It's hard on the soul for sure. Watching your backyard disappear is really hard.
We don't know necessarily when's the next time that we'll be able to come back to the site. Weather dependent and other factors play into it, so we try the best we can to go as quickly and effectively as possible.
These 4 researchers are the only ones providing these types of unique treatments in the Keys.
It's also really hard to have to bypass certain corals because we need to focus on the ones that are the most important for the ecosystem, and just kind of swimming by an animal that is in distress and going to die and having to say, sorry, good luck.
At the end of the day, this dedicated crew compare notes and reflect on the greater mission. Researchers in other parts of the Caribbean have now started using their same method to save corals infected by this very disease.
It's a good feel-good to know that without us, this reef would look very different than it does, not just now, but 5 years from now and probably 500 years from now.
Reporting from Looe Key Reef, Samantha-Jo, Roth, Spectrum, Bay News 9.
As I've said before, we both have said, frankly, that's not right versus left. This is right versus wrong.
2 members of Congress are jumping into the Free Britney fight with new legislation. Democrat Charlie Crist and Republican Nancy Mace want to help protect those under conservatorships from being abused or exploited.
He and I decided to pursue this after Britney Spears' testimony last month. And it was heartbreaking to hear her voice describe some of the abuses that she's endured under her conservatorship. And if it can happen to her, it can happen to anyone.
The bill would allow someone in a legal protective arrangement to petition a judge to replace their conservator or guardian without having to prove abuse or fraud. It would also provide independent caseworkers and more protections regarding financial matters.
This legislation makes it across the country the kind of thing that we can do to do what's right and not have the hodgepodge of guardianship or conservatorship bills that we have in all 50 states.
Spears has become the face of this issue.
I know that there have been a lot of comments and a lot of people saying a lot of different things about me.
In her testimony last month, she condemned her father and others who control the conservatorship that oversees her life, saying the arrangement was abusive and traumatizing.
Sometimes, you've got a very old, demented person who literally can't take care of their affairs. But Britney Spears is clearly not that person.
Lawrence Costin directed the National Association for Mental Health in the United Kingdom and helped to put in place guardianship safeguards there.
What we did was what Congress is considering doing now, which is making a national standard that there needed to be a judicial decision with due process, and there needed to be rigorous oversight. In the United States, as exposed by the Britney Spears case, has just fallen behind, and we need to do a lot better.
Kristen Mace's bill already has 15 co-sponsors from both parties. Do you hope that, you're working together will inspire, set an example for some of your colleagues to do more like this?
Let's hope so.
I truly
for the
hope
country's
so.
sake.
Yeah, for our country's sake, we have to.
In Washington, Samantha-Jo, Roth, Spectrum News.